New whiskey is being released all the time, and there are constantly new labels popping up on the TTB. In this episode, we're going to talk about 5 whiskeys I'm actually excited for coming up this year. So the idea for this comes from actually an Instagram account that I follow, and they are called @ComingWhiskey. I will link them in the description if you also want to follow them. And basically what this person does is look through all the TTB filings. So if you do not know what the TTB is, it is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Tax Bureau. And basically they are the industry regulator for alcohol and tobacco. So they're big in my industry. I am in the raw tobacco side of the tobacco industry. On the whiskey side of things, they regulate how labels are done. They're the ones that have all of the rules for those on their website. If you are interested in that, that is the one that I most often reference, especially when people are arguing about whether or not bourbon can be from outside of Kentucky. It can. There's a lot of things on bourbon labels that are unregulated. But there are a lot of things that are regulated, and it's interesting to see how those things are determined by the TTB. And it's also really interesting that those filings can give us an insight into what's coming. So Coming Whiskey does a fantastic job of just whenever something pops up on the TTB for approval, he shotguns that to his Instagram. It's interesting to see the new things that are coming, even if some of them are just this year's release of certain limited editions or even rebrands. It's cool to see the labels. It's cool to see how things are changing. You can see things from a side that's not necessarily available to the public, and it's kind of down deep under all of the press releases and kind of the BS company line responses. You will occasionally get some things on the TTB list that either aren't out yet or are coming, but sometime in the future. One of those examples is Old Forester had a 1984 single barrel coming out at some point as an addition to the Whiskey Row series. I have yet to see one of those in real life, so we'll see if that's happening or if that was something coming that's not really real. I don't really know. I'm pretty sure it wasn't an April Fool's joke, although sometimes those do get me, gotta be honest. So we're going to start off with a list of 5 things that I think are coming and that I am excited about. So without further ado, we're just going to get into it. So the first one coming out that I'm really excited for is Bardstown Bourbon Company has a wheated bourbon origin series coming out that is going to be 6 years old and at 106 proof. So they do currently have one. It is the Origin Series Bottled and Bond. That is also, I believe, 6 years. So this one is a different mash bill. The former mash bill was 68% corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley, which coincidentally is also Heaven Hill's wheated bourbon recipe. When Bardstown first started, they were sourcing a lot of stuff, and I think when they started making their mash bills, they started making them similar to what they were sourcing. I know that their high rye bourbon is the same as MGP's high rye mash bill, and this wheated bourbon is the same as Heaven Hill's wheated mash bill. Both of those companies very popular for sourcing. So it does kind of make sense that they would continue the mash bills with what they're already currently using so that there's not a huge drop off in the way that things taste when they do finally switch over to their own distillate. This one, however, is an entirely new mash bill. It's 53% corn, 39% wheat, and 8% malted barley. I'm not sure if that's a wheated that MGP uses. I know that they have a couple different ones. There's a 45% wheat that they run from there, and they do a lot of weird contract distilling stuff. But this is Origin Series, so it is 100% Bardstown made and produced, aged, distilled, all of that. And that's something that I'm really excited for because I've liked pretty much all of Bardstown's stuff that they make in-house up to this point. They are, I think, doing it the right way where they started from the ground up. They started with sourcing so they could have products right away, and they started churning out product. And they, at some point here, might actually rival MGP with the amount of distillate they can put out in a year. If you've not been to their location, it's fantastic. It's super cool to see how everything works down there. They are putting in the work. So super excited for this Bardstown Origin Series wheated. The next one I'm super interested in is Elijah Craig Toasted Rye. When their rye came out, apparently it was 2020. I don't know that I tried it until 2022. I really enjoyed it. It was actually one that made my best available ryes list. That is one that I think is fantastic. It's got a lot of bourbon type notes and it's very sweet and floral. So I'm wondering if a toasted barrel will help with some of that and maybe ground it a little bit more, maybe give it a little bit more barrel complexity, and that could be a great thing. I really liked, Nulu has a toasted rye that I really enjoy. There's a Belle of Bedford toasted rye that I have on my shelf that I really enjoy. Not a new thing, but it's cool to see Heaven Hill getting into some of that and transferring it over from some of their other products, and I'm here for it. I'm interested. I will probably buy one, especially if it's in the same price range as the bourbon, which is roughly 50 bucks. I think it could be really good there. So it is 94 proof and it will retain some of that. It's just, I think it's going to be a copy paste from the way that the toasted barrel bourbon is. The only thing that kind of makes me a little hesitant is I don't find the toasted barrel bourbon to be as good as their regular bourbon. So I'm hoping that whatever they do with that process is not repeated with the rye, or maybe the rye can withstand it a little bit better. Either way, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a great release and one that I am looking forward to hopefully owning at some point when it releases and Pennsylvania decides to actually get some. Moving on the list, there is a Castle and Key coming out called The Woolgatherer. Castle and Key is one that I don't talk about very frequently, but one that I actually really enjoy. Their rye, especially the Restoration Rye, has a lot of like great floral and like honeysuckle type notes that I really enjoy. Always on the hunt for their stuff. Unfortunately, not really anywhere around me gets it, but I really do enjoy it. And this one is finished in Amburana. So it is one of my favorite finishes. I think it depends. I can be weird on Amburana, especially with the Starlight, but I think that's the mash bill and the way that it plays with the Amburana. Amburana finished ryes, I think, are really interesting in the way that the rye plays with the Amburana, and I'm here for it. I think it's something that I'm interested in. It's something that I'm interested in, and it's something that I will be looking for. It says it's going to be 114 proof. Can't always trust what it has written on these labels for the TTB because sometimes they are just placeholders. It could be 100 proof. It could be 120 proof. Just need to be approved. If it is handwritten, it is allowed. You can't always trust it, but either way, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a fantastic release and I'm here for it. Now, the last two on the list are not continuing releases, but they're definitely special edition. The first one is this Maker's Mark wood finishing series. It is called the Heart Release and it has a big 2024 on it. So that has a little bit of a question to it because it does say wood finishing series, but they did also say that the BEP was going to be the last wood finishing series. So I'm wondering if this is going to be a continuation of what cellar aged was last year, or if they're just rebranding it entirely. It doesn't have a recipe on it like the previous wood finishing releases. It says finished with 10 virgin oak staves, which is what the 46 says on it. So it could be maybe a top tier Maker's 46 type release. It could be maybe a continuation of the cellar aged, or it could be the rebranding of the wood finishing series. I think it's probably the rebranding of the wood finishing series, although I don't entirely know. It does have a batch number on it, and it does have a proof at a very specific 112.6. So I don't know if that's a placeholder or if it is actually 112.6. I know when the Maker's cellar aged proof was coming out, there were a couple different labels submitted to the TTB with different proof points. Maybe they're blowing smoke and mirrors. I don't know. Either way, I'm pretty sure they're going to have a top tier flagship release this year. And either way, I'm interested in it. So whether it's this, the Heart release, or if it's some other kind of thing, I'm interested. I want it. I hope to find it. Finally, the most anticipated, I think, at least announced so far in 2024 for me release is not going to shock anybody. It is Jack Daniel's 14. So I loved Jack Daniel's 10 when it came out. I loved Jack Daniel's 12 when it came out. Jack Daniel's 14 is now popping up in TTB. It's a little bit of a break from what they had initially announced. After the success of 10, they had put up a picture that had a Jack Daniel's 10, a 12, a 15, and an 18. So I'm not sure what happened there. but now there is a label out there for 14. Also on the label, it does have 125 proof, which I can almost certainly tell you it's not going to be that. The type doesn't look right. I think it's a placeholder proof value. So I think it's probably, if I had to guess, going to be a 107, maybe just a slight bit more than that. I don't think that they're going to release a 14-year-old age product at barrel proof, because I can't even imagine what that would look like. The Jack Daniel's 12 is dark at 107 proof. That would be like mud. That could be really interesting. I'm here for it. I've said for a long time that if you are writing off Jack Daniel's simply because of Old Number 7, you need to stop that immediately. If you don't like the flavor profile, that's a whole different thing. But if you mentally can't get past Old Number 7, there is a whole world of Jack Daniel's whiskey that is fantastic past Old Number 7, and this is going to be a continuation in that series. I'm very here for it. I think it's going to be fantastic. I really hope that I can get one. Maybe it ends up being on our top 5 bourbons of 2024. The Jack Daniel's 12 was on that list for 2023. Don't at me. It is a bourbon. They export it as bourbon. They just don't want to talk about it like that for marketing purposes. I would love to hear what you guys are excited for this year. If it's limited releases, if it's continuations of Stag, if it's BTAC, if it's Penelope Architect. Drop your comments for what you're excited for coming up in 2024 and what you're hunting for. And hopefully we're all lucky this year and find exactly what we're looking for. If you want to suggest content, drop that in the comments. If you want to blast my picks, I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. If you like this content, check out our other videos. Please like and comment on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And we hope you'll join us in drinking like a gentleman. Cheers. I think it's going to be a fantastic release, and I will be looking for one. Maybe when I go to Kentucky Bourbon Fest, maybe I'll grab that. Really excited to go to Kentucky Bourbon Fest this year. Really excited to maybe find a Woolgatherer.